Have you voted yet? Election day is on Monday. Party leaders are making their final pitches to the undecided. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is making his first Saskatchewan stop at a campaign event in Saskatoon tonight. Liberal leader Mark Carney and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh both campaigned in Saskatoon on April 9th. A recent poll suggested the Conservatives are maintaining strong support in our province, but the Liberals are gaining ground. And nationally, the Liberals have maintained a lead throughout the campaign, but the Conservatives have narrowed the gap in recent days. So where will all of this leave Saskatchewan after Election Day? Well, the 306 panel is back for a special federal election discussion. Jack Saddleback is a professional speaker in Saskatoon. Dale Richardson is principal at Earnscliffe Strategies in Regina, and they both join us live right now. Good afternoon, Dale.
Hello.
And good afternoon, Jack.
Hey, good afternoon.
So a lot has happened since we last met. The leaders debated, the parties finally released their costed platforms, and the Tories are creeping back up on the Liberals. Dale, when things kicked off, is this what you expected, where it would be at, just days before the election?
Certainly different than what things were like even 4 months ago.
2 years ago.
Well, yeah, but like even 4 months ago, Peter, right, where the Conservatives, they were looking very strong. And then, Chrystia Freeland, she put the knife into the former Prime Minister Trudeau and kind of set things in motion where the Prime Minister finally realized that he needed to step down, and the leadership race kicked off, and Mr. Carney was elected as leader, and things have totally changed. And I mean, the biggest thing besides Justin Trudeau stepping down in terms of this race is Donald Trump. This race nationally has been about that man. And people in Canada, their fear of him. And, whether or not we like it in this province, and depending on how we feel about the Liberal government, pretty much right across Canada, Mr. Trump and his attack on Canada with the tariffs and everything else that he's done, that has been the primary focus of this campaign. And to the Conservatives' credit, I think that they have tried to make it about something that has not been about Trump and the tariffs, but I guess we'll see what happens Monday night, but I'm not sure if they've been able to move people back to their preferred ballot question.
Jack, we're going to talk a lot about the Conservatives and the Liberals, obviously, today, but I did want to ask, the polls suggest the NDP is in trouble across the country, and I'm wondering why you think that message hasn't resonated in Saskatchewan.
I've always wanted to be a very optimistic individual, as folks who may or may not know me. And unfortunately, what's happening with the NDP is that the translation of better and brighter tomorrow doesn't seem to be translating that well to the general public. And that's a frustrating thing to see. With Jagmeet Singh, back when he was running for the leadership spot in the NDP, he had a very strong message of love and compassion and hope. And now that we're having this divisive politics taken over, I think, the landscape, that he's had to change his narrative to be a little bit more hard stance. And that doesn't seem to be translating with the general public. With that said, it's frustrating to see that the NDP couldn't gain that ground when this, in my opinion, was the election for them to do so. Especially as Dale was saying with what's happening down south, the NDP and kind of this more progressive side of politics that could take place in our country, that didn't translate, and that's frustrating to see.
I mentioned the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, is in Saskatoon tonight, his first and I'm guessing only Saskatchewan stop on the campaign, unless he comes back this weekend for whatever reason. Just for our listeners, for the record, we have requested Mr. Poilievre to be on the show twice, but we didn't actually even receive a response to either request. Was hoping to get him on today. But Dale, just how do you feel about the timing of this visit from the Conservative leader?
Most political campaigns their schedule and their days are planned out months in advance. Unless things are going very poorly on a political campaign, and then you need to make changes fast, and the plan gets thrown out the window. I wouldn't look too much into this in terms of are they in trouble in Saskatoon, or does he need to shore up support? I mean, generally speaking, I think that there'll be certainly, and I think we'll talk about this. There's going to be closer races in this province, and definitely ones to watch. But I think Saskatoon and nearby regions around Saskatoon are friendly territory to Mr. Poilievre. So why not go to Saskatoon and spend some time and see supporters that are happy to see you and feel good about how things are going, and have kind of a relatively safe territory to finish off your campaign.
Do you think, with that point made, that this might have been scheduled months ago? But it is interesting that all three leaders only went to Saskatoon and nobody came to Regina. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that speaks to that none of the leaders think that Regina is very competitive. It seems like they think it's a little closer in Saskatoon. I mean, the fact that the NDP Jagmeet Singh went to Saskatoon, that would of course indicate that Saskatoon West is competitive, which is probably the only one for the NDP, in the province, which Jack mentioned, and what a collapse for the NDP federally that it has happened nationally, but we are seeing kind of happen here in some local races as well. So I mean, I think happy to see Mr. Poilievre here.
Jack, I mentioned that we did make requests, but it's been pretty common for no immediate availability to be for Pierre Poilievre not to have immediate availability. But although he is holding a news conference tomorrow morning in Saskatoon, he's limited access and restricted the number of questions. That's not totally uncommon, obviously. But what do you think of that from a strategy point of view? Is that a good or a bad strategy?
Well, like any politician that wants to hear the good news, you're going to have people in your room that's going to tell you good news, and unfortunately, that's what the strategy is being seen on the Conservative side. The inability for reporters that may give or ask questions that are going to be putting him in the hot seat or make him question, what did I actually say on the campaign trail? That's, in my opinion, a good move if you want to be able to kind of hold your ground and hold your gate where it is. But it is frustrating because I want to say that there needs to be a little bit more oomph or questioning happening to the political party leader. And right now it needs to focus, on my opinion, on some of the ideology talk that he's been trying to spew, in which that is also coming up from the States. Needless to say, we'll get into that.
Can we jump into it now, Jack? Because, a big part of the election, as Dale mentioned, is sovereignty, pushing it back against the United States and President Trump. But this week, Conservatives included a, quote, anti-woke ideology promise in its platform. And it says, quote, a Conservative government will put an end to the imposition of woke ideology in the federal public service and in the allocation of federal funds for university research. That does sound like it's from the MAGA playbook. What do policies like that say to you?
If this is not ringing large alarm bells across our country, I don't know what will, because this is a serious overstep into freedom of speech, into freedom of thought, into the ability for education to be able to look at what does society look like and how do we fix things within society. To have a government overstep and try to defund certain research that looks at minority groups such as myself, that is a huge concern. And if I may say, this isn't necessarily just mega agenda that's happening. These are agendas that have been happening around the world. This is a far-right agenda that's been spewing and brewing for a number of years. And what I will give the American politics pat on the back is it brought it to light. It brought it forward in that everyone else in the world can now see what was kind of on the fringes for many years. And this is also an ideology that we've seen before. We've seen this within Nazi Germany. This is just another iteration of that that's starting to bubble up again. And for a Conservative Party like this in 2025, I'm pretty sure that is, at least that's what my watch says, this just feels like a 1930 spewing of propaganda once again. And it should be a major concern for everyone who's heading to the polls.
Dale got you to raise your eyebrows there. I mean, any thoughts
maybe
just on the Conservatives including this in their platform? Is it, like I said, reminiscent of what Donald Trump did in his presidential campaign?
To be honest, I would have rather that they had not included this in their platform, which initially they had not included it. And then I'm not sure if somebody from the media asked or...
Well, it was included on the French part of the platform, but I think it was just an oversight on the English side.
They actually genuinely
just forgot, because it was still available on the French platform.
I mean, either way, I wish that they wouldn't put these things in platforms. It's a problem that I think probably when one looks back on this campaign, they're going to look at things like this and realize these are the types of things that probably were at least part of the turnoff for people when they at least thought about voting Conservative and for Mr. Poilievre. These are the issues, generally speaking, for voters across Canada, but in particular in the parts of Canada where the Conservatives need to win seats, BC, Ontario, Quebec, which are just not issues for people. People are very clearly said in this campaign that they are concerned about Donald Trump, the tariffs, what Trump wants to or does not want to do to Canada. But beyond that, they're concerned about affordability and cost of living and just having an easier life generally. And these little kind of side projects, we talked about this in the fall with the provincial campaign. These are little sideline issues that I think are important for certain small constituents, people that really follow politics and are really passionate. But it doesn't translate very well to the general public of people who are just trying to live their lives, and they look at things like this and go, really, this is what you're concerned about? So I think it was a mistake.
If I may be sorry, but before we move on
John.
from that, I wholeheartedly agree with yourself there, Dale, in that when it is brought into a party platform as kind of a fringe sort of issue, for the general public, it feels odd. It feels off. But at the same time, should this party be elected in, the people that are directly affected by this are going to be directly affected by this, i.e. trans folks, i.e. Indigenous folks, i.e. people who are dealing with poverty issues. And the ideology that they're bringing in can be harmful. And for the most part, Canadians don't agree with what's going on. But when a party holds that ideology, they're going to be bringing it into the realm of government.
I mean, maybe there's no guarantee for that. I mean, there's a ton of things in the past that
But we've seen that with the Sask Party at the same time. Like they brought in the pronoun policy.
Yeah, I know. It goes both ways. Things are in platforms that don't end up in government. Things are not in platforms that do end up in government, and so there's no guarantee. But either way, it's not a great issue for the Conservatives.
Right. Well, let's bring it back home. Well, let's run through some hypotheticals as well. I mean, it's obviously between two parties here. Dale, if the polls are correct and the Liberals form government, what do you think? What influence will that have on Saskatchewan, and how will what will Premier Moe do?
Mm-hmm. It's been something that's been on my mind this week for sure, as it's become more clear that it will likely be a Liberal Carney government, and I think overall how Premier Moe or the Saskatchewan Party government is going to approach relations, it might look similar to what it's looked like in the past. And I don't want people to hear me say that and think it's just going to be fire and brimstone all the time and everything that the federal government does, the premier is going to come out and say, this is terrible, this is awful, because there were certainly moments like that in the last number of years where that has been the approach. But people seem to forget that there were actually lots of agreements signed between the federal government and the province. Yep. Childcare, which I know it needs to be re-signed again, and that's been news recently, but childcare agreement, healthcare agreement, Canada Builds Fund, which is improving, cities' infrastructure, national school food program. So there have been lots of agreement between the federal government and the province. But if the new Liberal government, Mr. Carney, if they do things that are not in step with what is in the best interests of this province, for sure, the premier, I think I maybe said the last time I was on the show, he will go have a scrum with the media as soon as possible. And anything to do with the carbon tax, any hint of any kind of carbon tax like that, anything that hurts the potash sector, uranium, anything with natural resources that holds Saskatchewan back in terms of producing, as I've said many times, growing the things and taking things out of the ground that we then sell to other parts of the
autonomy.
world. It's about autonomy and letting us do what Saskatchewan does best. If the federal government gets in the way of that at all, I would expect, and I hope other people in this province would want the premier and his government to stand up and say that's wrong.
Jack, if the Liberals form government, how would you want Saskatchewan to interact with that government?
Well, I would hope Scott Moe is able to heal from his past exes and recognize he's got a new partner in town. A brand new slate is what's on the docket, and like any good politician, being able to recognize that we don't know what's going to happen as we move forward, and to be a little flexible, hear each other out on both sides. Like I've said this a few years ago when we were doing our first iterations of our political pals, that both the federal government and the provincial government need to actually sit down and have a listen to one another. That being said, with Scott Moe, I recognize that the Trudeau relationship was pretty. It was pretty spicy. There was a lot of anger happening, a lot of divisiveness going on. But with Carney, we hear that the carbon tax is not necessarily on the table. That we don't know what's going to look like as we move forward. With this new Liberal government, we don't know what the cabinet's going to look like. It will be a much smaller cabinet, as we've gotten hints. And with the Saskatchewan federal government, we'll see how that relation looks. So.
Isn't it amazing, Peter, since Justin Trudeau has left, how much the temperature has dropped?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, Dale. I do want to get into the Conservative hypothetical because we have to talk about that, obviously. But I did want to ask that just eliminating the Trudeau name.
Yeah.
Because obviously that would have come with baggage going all the way back to his father, Pierre Trudeau, and especially here in Saskatchewan. Do you think that Mark Carney, in this case, if they do form government, he doesn't have that same baggage? So even though they might disagree on resources and stuff, they don't necessarily. Scott Moe wouldn't be coming out and in his acceptance speech as the Sask Party leader wouldn't necessarily be saying, "I'm coming after you, Mark Carney." Right?
Again, we'll see what a Carney Liberal government does. It all depends on what they do and the things, the policies they put in place. But just nationally, I mean, people hated Trudeau so much by the end of his time that they thought, I guess we'll take a serious look at this Poilievre guy. And then Carney comes in and the stuff with Trump and people go, no, I think we're going to stick with the Liberals. I mean, it just speaks to how hated Justin Trudeau was. And he's gone. So it's just it's a real turnaround. It's amazing.
All right. The other possibility. Oh, go ahead. Jack, let's get to the Conservatives. I want to talk about the possibility of the Conservatives forming government. And Jack, how do you think that would affect Saskatchewan?
Well, for Saskatchewan, I think there certainly is going to be a little bit of a warmer reception taking place, a little bit more of a I'm going to pick up the phone or I'm going to text you late at night to be able to ensure that things are rolling along quite nicely. When it comes to the resource development, I do have some concerns. We've heard from the Conservative Party platform that the whole aspect, and we just heard this I think yesterday or the day before at the AFN, which is the Assembly of First Nations roundtable with the leaders, that the Conservative Party is recognizing that UNDRIP, which is the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
Oh, Jack, hold on one second. I believe we, for some reason, you just cut out, Jack. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, no, we lost Jack, I think. I'm not sure what's going on. Dale, while we try to reconnect with Jack, because I don't think Jack can even hear us, what are your thoughts if the Conservatives form government? Is it going to be smooth sailing relations between the province and the federal government, or do you think Saskatchewan continues to push for that autonomy?
I don't think there's any guarantee that a Conservative government is going to be all sunshine and roses. I mean, I think it's probably more likely in terms of the policies that they have promised if they are elected government. Things like approving pipelines and getting rid of all forms of the carbon tax. That'll certainly be more in line with what Saskatchewan needs in terms of our economy. But I mean, I think I've mentioned before that things with the former Stephen Harper government, they were not always perfect. So I guess we'll see.
But now that you mention it, do they go after them for reformulate? I can't think of the word. Did they discuss equalization and come up with a new formula?
No, I would be very surprised if they did, because that means that provinces like Quebec, that they don't have as much money coming from equalization, and Quebec is unfortunately for Western Canada, it is a significant. It's a significant part of Canada, so I'd be surprised if they do something like that. But I guess we'll see. And again, it's all hypotheticals. Do we have Jack back?
Well, Jack, you're back. Okay, Jack, we got 2 minutes. You can either pick up where you left off, or you can just give your general thoughts on what we might expect to see on Monday.
I'm going to quickly wrap up my thoughts when it came to
Please.
the aspect of Conservative government potentially going forward with this. I recognize that Saskatchewan and with a potential Conservative federal government will have warmer relations. When it comes to resource development, this is where a lot of my concern is coming from, particularly with the Conservative platform on Indigenous rights and particularly free, prior, and informed consent. As we heard at the AFN, which is the Assembly of First Nations meeting that just happened yesterday or the day before, the Conservatives Pierre had gone and said that we recognize your rights, but we are concerned with free, prior, and informed consent in the way it iterates itself in resource development. Now, when we're looking at Monday, this is going to be a kind of a fun day. We have a very tight race going between Conservatives and the Liberals. We have some very tight seats here in Saskatchewan. Not many, but we do have some. So we'll see how it all plays out and whether or not those boots on the ground or those knuckles on the door as they knock have actually translated well.
Dale, do you think Saskatchewan goes all blue again, or do the Liberals pick up any seats in Saskatchewan?
I don't know. I think it's more likely that maybe one seat does not go blue.
The northern seat, maybe?
Yeah, probably that one. It's so hard to tell with the northern riding. I've campaigned up there provincially before, and it's tricky. It's not straightforward. I think in the cities, I think Saskatoon West is going to be the most competitive three-way race between the Conservatives, NDP, and the Liberals.
Which should favor the Conservatives then?
I don't know. I mean, it has in the past, so maybe that's the logic there. And then I would say people are talking about Regina Wascana as the one that is supposed to be the one to watch. I think it's more Regina Louvain on the west side of the city, which could be more interesting, mostly because the NDP's vote has totally collapsed. I live in Lakeview. There are Liberal signs all around where I live and at houses that provincially I know had NDP lawn signs last fall. So this is going to be very interesting to see on Monday night.
We got to wrap it up there. Great discussion, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.